There's something truly magical about the sound of falling snow. It's almost silent, but if you listen closely, you can hear this soft, muffled hush settle over everything. It's as mesmerizing as watching lightning strike across the sky or spotting a shooting star, a rare, fleeting moment that feels like pure magic. I've never been much of a hiker, to be honest. The idea of trekking for miles just never appealed to me. But when it snows, something changes. I get this irresistible urge to be outside, to walk through a world transformed by a blanket of white. One Saturday night, I was feeling a bit rough. I'd been out with friends the night before, and let's just say the morning wasn't my finest moment. I was just staring out my window, watching the world go by, when it started. The weather forecast hadn't said a thing about snow, but it began falling suddenly, like someone just flipped a switch. It was coming down thick and fast. Within just a few minutes, the ground, the trees, everything was covered in a pristine layer of white. Without even really thinking about it, I grabbed my coat and my keys. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. There's a hiking trail not too far from my house. It's secluded, quiet, and absolutely perfect for a walk in the snow. The drive there was surreal. The world looked completely different, muted and peaceful under the falling flakes. When I arrived, the parking lot was empty, just as I'd hoped. I started down the path, the only sound being the satisfying crunch of fresh snow under my boots. The air was crisp and cold, and the silence of the woods was profound. I wandered deeper and deeper, letting the stillness of the night and the gentle snowfall guide me. There were no other tracks, no signs of anyone else. It was just me and the forest. After about 20 minutes of walking, I stopped to just take it all in. The moonlight was filtering through the branches, making the snow sparkle. I felt this incredible sense of peace wash over me. It was serene, perfect, until I heard it. A voice, a child's voice. It was soft, almost playful, and it said just one word. Hi. My heart skipped a beat. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe it was the wind, or an animal. I was alone out here, miles from any houses, but then I heard it again, clearer this time, unmistakable. Hi. My heart started pounding in my chest. I scanned the woods around me, my eyes darting from tree to tree, but I couldn't see anything. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. My calm serenity was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Then the voice called out again, but this time it was different. It was laced with a strange, childish amusement. Up here? Silly. I tilted my head back, my eyes searching the canopy above, and that's when I saw him. A little boy, perched on a thick tree branch at least 20 feet off the ground. He looked to be about 9 years old, all bundled up in a winter coat and hat. And he was smiling, a wide, fixed, unnatural grin that didn't reach his eyes. For a split second, seeing him actually calmed me down. At least now I knew where the voice was coming from. It wasn't just in my head. But that feeling didn't last. The longer I looked at him, the more my skin crawled. Something about him was just wrong. I took a cautious step closer to the tree, my boots sinking into the deep snow. I looked down at the base of the tree, and my blood ran cold. There were no footprints. None. The snow around the tree was completely untouched. He must have climbed up there before the snow started falling, which meant he'd been sitting on that branch, in the freezing cold, for at least 45 minutes. I looked back up at the tree. The trunk was perfectly straight, with no low-hanging branches. It would have been nearly impossible for a full-grown adult to climb, let alone a small child. Hey, I called up, trying to keep my voice steady. Are you okay? How in the world did you get up there? His grin just widened. It stretched his face in a way that looked painful. It's a secret, he said, his voice echoing slightly in the silent woods. The playful tone was gone, replaced by something hollow and unsettling. Then, without any warning, he stood up on the branch. It was a precarious move, 20 feet in the air, but he was perfectly balanced, like he did it every day. He spread his arms out to his sides and said, "Watch this." Before I could even process what was happening, before I could shout for him to stop, he leaned back and just fell. He tipped backward off the branch like a doll. I screamed. It was a raw, primal sound torn from my throat. I was certain I had just watched a child fall to his death. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the sickening thud. But it never came. Instead, I heard a soft crunch, and then laughter. I opened my eyes, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was on his feet, standing in the snow as if he'd just hopped off a curb. He hadn't fallen. He'd landed. He sprang up and, without a single glance back at me, bolted deeper into the woods. His laughter wasn't the sound of a happy child. It was high and shrill, more like a cackle, and it echoed eerily through the trees, against every rational thought, against every self-preservation instinct, screaming at me to run back to my car. I ran after him. I don't know why. Maybe it was adrenaline, or shock, or some misguided sense of responsibility. I just knew I couldn't let him disappear into the darkness. I followed his footprints, which were now clearly visible in the snow. He was fast, impossibly fast. The chase was a blur of dark trees and white snow, his haunting laughter always just ahead of me. I was panting, my lungs burning from the cold air. As I rounded a large oak tree, I suddenly felt something heavy latch onto my back. An incredible weight and a searing pain. He was on me, clawing at my neck, my shoulders, his small hands surprisingly strong. I screamed again, stumbling forward, trying to reach behind me. I grabbed blindly at his jacket, his arms, anything I could get a hold of. Finally, with a desperate heave, I managed to throw him off me. He hit the snow with a soft thud and scrambled back to his feet in an instant. He looked at me for a moment, that terrible grin still plastered on his face, and then he turned and vanished into the darkness, his laughter fading into the distance. I stood there, shaking, gasping for breath. I could feel warm blood trickling down my neck and back. My hands were shaken so badly I could barely function. I ripped off my beanie and pressed it against my neck to try and stop the bleeding. The next 20 minutes are a complete blur in my memory. I just remember running, stumbling through the snow, driven by pure terror, not even sure if I was going in the right direction. Somehow, I found my way back to the trail, and then to the road. I must have flagged someone down, because the next thing I clearly remember is the flashing red and blue lights in the inside of an ambulance. I tried to recount the events to the police officers, my voice trembling. They listened, their faces a mixture of concern and disbelief. They searched the trail that night. They combed the area where I told them it all happened. They found nothing. No little boy. No disturbance in the snow other than my own frantic tracks. Just my footprints leading into the woods, and then my footprints leading back out. Hours later, after being checked out at the hospital, I couldn't stop myself. I drove back to the trail. The sun was starting to rise, casting a pale, gray light over the forest. The snow had stopped falling, and a fresh layer had covered everything, including my tracks from the night before. The woods were silent and empty. There was no sign that he had ever been there. No explanation for the deep scratches on my neck and back. To this day, I can't make sense of what happened. Was it a ghost? Some kind of forest creature? I have no idea. But that night remains the single most terrifying experience of my life. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the quiet, beautiful places hold secrets we aren't meant to understand. And now, when the snow starts to fall, I don't feel that magical pull anymore. I just lock my doors and stay inside. Thanks for listening.